Hi everyone, I'm Jane at Rockin' Worms. I hope you're having a good day. I know I am because I'm getting to work with my worms for a little bit. So these are two cocoon bins that I set up in February. One is the 13th. I think this one's the 13th and this one is the 16th. Doesn't matter. They're the result of a breeder bin reset I did that weekend, okay? And I took out the breeders, put them in new bins, and left the cocoons and beddings in those bins. And I've been letting the cocoons hatch and the new worms grow up a little bit. So I am anticipating that I'm going to sift these bins out for the castings in about 2 weeks. So I wanted to start drying down these bins very slowly, very gently, so I can, again, prep them for sifting. And using these cardboard fins is my new favorite way of doing a dry down. I used to do a, thin spread out on a big bin and let the bedding dry down that way, but it gets a little touch and go because it can dry down very quickly. And if you don't catch it because you're busy or you get distracted or, life happens, you can really, ruin your castings. So this cardboard fin method is much more forgiving on the dry down because it takes a little bit longer. It's a little bit slower, but it leaves the castings in better shape when it's done. Now, also, there are worms in here as well and a lot of babies in here. So, again, I want to be careful not to dry things down too quickly and cause harm. Now, this bin I went through earlier today and pulled out the fins, fluffed the bin, saw all those young worms in there, and I thought, hey, maybe you guys want to see what a cocoon bin looks like as it's maturing into a nursery bin and well on its way to being a grow out bin. So I finished this bin and I went to the second bin, and that's what I'm going to work with you on right now. So again, this is the bin that was set up on, February 13th or 16th. I had put in these fins 2 days ago. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to pull the fins out and see if the dry down is working, which you can see it is because the moisture in the castings and the bedding is wicking up into the cardboard and making it available for evaporation out. So I'm just going to quickly pull out these fins. And what I'm doing here is just making sure I don't have any worms or babies stuck to it because I don't want them, I just knocked one off. I don't want these to dry out, the worms to dry out while I'm working on the bin, even though here's one. Here's a couple right here, even though I'm only gonna be working on, oh, and look it, I have a bin companion, some type of little beetle. I don't actually know what kind of beetle that is. If you do happen to know what kind of beetle that is, please let me know in the comments. I'd like to learn what that is, okay? And then I also have a cocoon still left. So this bin has been operating as a cocoon bin for 66 days. And when you Google how long does it take for cocoons to hatch, you get a range of dates, but it's generally between 23 days to years because cocoons will hatch when the environment is favorable for the baby worms to survive. So obviously the environment is favorable for lots of worms to hatch, but this one is taking its, sweet time. So I'm not at all surprised to see some cocoons still in here, along with the new hatches. Okay, let me flip this over, make sure I don't have anybody on the back side. Yep, okay, let me pull out I'll just have a couple more fins to take out. And then what we're gonna do, see, some more little worms, there you go. Okay. These are all red wigglers, by the way, because that's what I have. So these are red wigglers. Okay, pretty good. And again, you can see how the moisture is wicking up the cardboard in order to dry down the bedding. Now this bedding did not have any issues to begin with. It wasn't super wet and potentially, you know, getting itself into trouble like my Dancing with the Devil bin. But this type of cardboard dry down procedure works for, you know, your regular going great grow out bins that you're getting ready to harvest for castings. Okay, everything's out. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna start fluffing the bin. And you can see, look at, these are all hatches from the cocoons, from about 1,000 cocoons, give or take a few. I did count them, so give or take a few worms. On average, there's between 2 and 3 viable worms that will emerge from each cocoon. So that means in here, I have somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 worms. My guess it's closer to the, you know, the 2,000, you know, 500 kind of thing, because the average does seem to be more towards the 2 end of things than the 3 end of things. But I've got a lot of worms in here. And also, I have been feeding this bin very little because, again, it's coming out of a breeder bin, which I stock heavily with food. So the breeders have plenty to eat without exerting themselves during their 21-day breeding cycle. So when I pull out the breeders and this becomes a cocoon bin, there's still a lot of food available for the baby worms when they start hatching. And as always, you do not want to overfeed. Here's somebody on my glove. You do not want to overfeed your worms. Now, while I'm digging through this and aerating it and admiring my new worm mates here, I'm also keeping half an eye out for any adults. I put in this bin, because I know it on my label here. You want to show the label here? I put in about 50 adults when I set up this bin. And I do that because I believe that the adults, by their action, working through the bedding, provide aeration to the cocoons. There may be some signaling going on to the cocoons that, you know, this is an environment that is survivable and comfortable to worms. So go ahead and hatch and come out and join the party. Now, I will tell you that, like I said, I put in about 50 adults into this breeder bin. I'm sorry, I'm misspeaking. 50 adults into this cocoon bin. However, I have recently started not putting adults into the cocoon bins, but putting in juveniles into the cocoon bins, because the juveniles will perform the same function of aerating the soil and providing, you know, maybe some signaling that the environment is good to go. But the juveniles won't be producing cocoons, because at some point I don't want to introduce more cocoons into this bin. I want the cocoons that are here to hatch and mature. So in the beginning I was doing adults because frankly that's what I had most readily available to me to add back into the cocoon bins. But now that I have bins and bins of juveniles, I'm now adding juveniles into my cocoon bins. And again, I would call this more a nursery bin now, because I do have some cocoons, but they're very few. It's mostly, you know, hatched worms at this point. But like I said, I am looking to see if there's any adults in here. Adulting on the worms happens somewhere between 9 and 12 weeks of age. So that would be somewhere again between 72 days upward. And this bin is 66 days old. So I'm getting right on the cusp of some of these juveniles maturing into breeding age adults. Since I'm going to hopefully be sifting this out in a week or two, I hope to be able to pull out some new adults and get them started in their own breeder bin. All right. So anyways, I just wanted to show you what a cocoon bin looks like as 1,000 cocoons start to hatch. And the new worms, look at, you know, these new worms come along. Look at that. And look at, they've got their little tails, their little yellow tails. Beautiful. And by the way, look at these castings, okay? Because this, again, this substrate bedding has been going since 3 weeks before the February 16th date, because that's when the breeder bin started, and the breeder started working on this bedding material. And then on the February 13th, 16th date, that's when the cocoons started having, you know, their chance at this bedding. Obviously, they had to hatch first, but cocoons can, you know, again, hatch within 23 days or so. So beautiful. All right. Just wanted to share that with you. Again, I hope you're having a good day. I'm going to get back to work, and I'll see you next time. I am, as always, yours in the dirt, Jane.